Hello, Abram. I don't hear you.
Hold on. Do you
There we
hear me
go.
now?
I do.
Uh,
Hello.
hey.
How is your week going?
It could be worse, I guess. So, yeah. I think the thing to talk about, we have a couple of choices.
Okay.
Um, we could talk about, well, what I'm most familiar with probably is repetitive of some other things, but it is the eighth birthday of Raspberry Pi, and I have a bunch of facts about that. Plus, they cut the price.
I saw that.
Um, um, there are a slew of shows being tech shows being canceled um,
Oh yeah.
because of coronavirus. I'm not sure if that's as interesting to the listeners to know which everything that's going on with them being canceled, but it's it is a disaster.
Uh, uh, a couple of first events, competitions have already been canceled because of it. Now,
Yeah, well,
granted they're Asian events, and so that makes more sense than normal. But
every single event seems to be getting canceled, and the worst part of all is that we keep hearing sort of off the record from companies about, well, our stuff is delayed, our stuff isn't coming out on time because of coronavirus. So so it's having a huge impact on not just events, but the actual products that those events are meant to showcase. So it's uh it's a disaster. Um, but Raspberry Pi would be an easier, lighter topic.
yeah, for sure. And
But I
it's
think in the opening we could mention the coronavirus
yeah,
stuff becoming a disaster.
yeah.
Um,
Uh, we were we were looking at going to a show in Chicago in 2 weeks, and Michelle and I decided not to.
well, I think it's good because even if you were comfortable going to the show, there's a good chance that nobody else would be there
Right.
or it would be canceled. You spent your money, it was canceled.
Yeah, exactly. So we decided not to put the time and effort into it. We're gonna still do the Orlando Regional, but even then we're a little afraid that they've got a couple of international teams. We're afraid of what that might end up looking like. So whatevs.
Uh, I think we should talk about this in the open part. So,
Yeah, that sounds
but
good.
then for all right, very good
And then Raspberry Pi for
for a
Pilch
filter
Point.
point.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 8 years. I have some interesting statistics. Price cut. Um, some other some other things. So
Okay. I've also been working on a little. The Pilch Point brand is kind of the only one, the only primary one that doesn't have like a an icon.
okay.
We always use the whole word. I've been working on something, and I want to show it to you later and see what you think.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Looks kind of like a GPS point, but using the new
Oh,
dot on the eye. So it kind
sounds
of
neat.
emphasizes the point aspect of it, which I thought was a good idea. Anyway,
We'll just get to the point. Sounds good.
I like that.
Sounds good.
Okay, Clearview had their customer data stolen, which is a big deal, and then Apple said that they were violating their developer agreement and pulled it from all iDevices. Oh, my favorite tabletop game of like the last 10 years, DropMix, has a video game version coming called Fuser, which I'm super excited about. And since we're trying to get the DDR Lover brand up and running again, this kind of fits under it. So figured we'd talk about
Great.
that. I actually kind of wanted to bring the original game in here, but I don't think I'm going to. And then Firefox doing encrypted traffic, DNS over HTTPS. And then PragerU lost their YouTube lawsuit this week, which sucks. But I was rooting for them on that one. Anyway, so all sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. I need to change the studio output to you. I need to change the recording to you. All right, much better. I can actually see you in here. I knew something seemed off. All right. Record studio, record you, record audio. Here we go. Good evening from Plugkit Studios in Largo, Florida. I'm Scott.
I'm Abram.
And we are here with episode 552 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, for Sunday, March 1st, 2020. This show is a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. This week, Clearview's customer list is exposed, DropMix's gaming style is upgraded, and Firefox's browsing is more protected. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Mixer, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify TuneIn, or a myriad of other options, on the radio, or on our website, plugkitslive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are now 3 ways that you can do that. The first is you can join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern by going to f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us during the show and give your feedback on the topics as we talk about them. Or you can listen on 88.1 WMLD radio in the New York area or through their website Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. Or, of course, you can always go to our website, plugkitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live and The Pilch Point, Plugkits Live Presents, and a whole lot more. And find all the ways that you can watch or listen from there. And, Avram, how are you doing this week, buddy?
Decent. I think we're all very worried at Tom's Hardware, and I'm personally very worried about what the effects of the coronavirus are going to be on our industry.
For sure.
Obviously, everyone has personal concerns about catching it, but at this point, at least as far as we know, while we're doing this show, there's not a lot of cases in the United States, and the level of danger seems to be quite low. But the level of danger to people's livelihood is very high.
Yes.
because what is going on now is having a very dramatic effect on the tech industry. Not only the tech industry, but that's where we come from, so we'll
Sure.
talk about that. There's a lot of products that are being delayed. We're a lot of times we're hearing from companies where, in addition to the events that, there's just a lot of tech events being canceled, but also things that we really can't talk about specifically, where maybe there were going to be press events for things that were canceled, and not just because of fear that people would go there and get the coronavirus, but fear that not fear, but like reality that, hey, the products that maybe they were going to show people aren't ready yet.
Yeah.
Why not? Because coronavirus.
Right.
So it's having a really big impact on manufacturing, um, even though the area where most manufacturing occurs in China, Shenzhen, is not where the outbreak is. But apparently, a lot of resistors come from an affected area, and resistors go into everything.
Interesting.
So, um, so that's having an effect. Um, so I think we can all expect, delays of product launches, shortage, that people have been expecting, perhaps shortages of things. I know Apple had said they were
Hmm.
going to have issues producing the iPhone. Um, so I think this is definitely going to have a negative effect. And then you have people, obviously, it can't possibly be good for the overall economy when people are no longer traveling.
Right.
They're not going to events. I mean, if it's unacceptable if it's dangerous to have people come to an event where there might be hundreds of other people, is it then also dangerous for them to go to a shopping mall or get on a train? I mean, so
Right.
it's definitely definitely a concern,
Sure.
and obviously there's a huge human concern about people getting sick, but I think there's also a big concern about you know just a huge ripple effect on the economy and on the tech industry when everything's being canceled and things are being massively delayed.
Very true. Interestingly, though, um, and I have no idea what this says about anything, but uh, although Microsoft has canceled events, um, uh, one of their one of their events overseas, developer event they just canceled, and it sounds like they might not be holding the event where they were going to, all theory, of course, but where they were going to announce the next generation Surface devices. But they have said that the Surface Duo is production wise is ahead of schedule and might come out this summer instead of this fall. I don't know what that says. Maybe the fact that they bought that factory from Nokia in India is helping them in some way. I have no idea.
Yeah,
But I
that
mean
might
that's
be right,
fascinating.
because that might be. It certainly is going to have a huge effect on manufacturing in China, where so
Mm,
much of tech stuff comes from, and anything that's manufactured in Japan. Although there's not a ton of manufacturing in Japan going on for tech industry anyway. But yeah, it's. I think maybe the. I think as of Friday, Microsoft Build was still on.
mm-hmm.
Um, they hadn't canceled their Build developer event, which is set for May. Um, Also, as of Friday, my favorite show, Computex, which takes place in Taiwan, and is like the CES, the most important tech show of the year besides CES, and probably for computers more important,
Mm-hmm.
um, is still not been canceled, and that's to take place the first week of June. However, and I'll just leave it at this: Tytra, the organization that runs Computex, put out a statement this week, which makes me think that if they do run the show, no one's going to want to go to it, because they are going to have they want everyone there to go to wear a mask. They are going to have nurses on every floor, and it's not 100% clear whether they will be taking people's temperatures or they will just want you to take your own temperature. But their statement heavily implied that they might be taking people's temperatures to see at the door, which, by the way, is not is also what happens when you get off the plane in Taiwan. They take your temperature, um,
Hmm.
and if they don't like your temperature, uh, you could be quarantined. Um, but what's
Fascinating.
really kind of messed up is, we know that coronavirus, uh, COVID-19, takes can take as many as 14 days to appear, and some people will never have symptoms. So, is taking people's temperature really going to tell you what you need to know to protect people?
Not at all.
Um, I heard that in China they actually are doing that at some fast food restaurants or something. Like,
Interesting.
also, by the time you've gotten to the place where they're taking your temperature, aren't you already sneezing on people,
Yep.
or whatever? So I I don't know. This is a very messed up situation, but um, so we'll have to wait and see. I think the smart money is that Computex is canceled, um, and we'll have to see. I mean, there was talk this week about the Olympic spot, which is in end of July, possibly being canceled.
Yep.
So, um, you know,
Uh, they
that's
will not.
that's
They will
scary
not
because
make. They will not make a decision on it until. They will not announce a decision until at least 90 days out. So that would be the end of April.
right. Well, they should give it. I think they should give it some time. I mean,
Yeah.
right now, I think it's a period where a lot of people are panicking, and we don't know what's going to happen. And
And that not
it's
knowing is
easy to just
creating
say
an additional
cancel
panic.
everything. Right. Right. Exactly. But it's just easy. I think that the panic is having and going to continue to have a lot of effects on people, because when you close a major event, there's a lot of people who are losing a lot of money, and that those aren't just big companies that can afford to. Those are food vendors, those
Mm-hmm.
are hotels, those are people who are losing money and losing work. um so
The
anyway.
small
um
exhibitors. Look at the game developer conference, right? That that
yeah,
isn't just attended by Microsoft, Sony, Activision, and Epic. Yeah, that's attended
right.
by small developers, little indie guys, and with that being canceled, it's been postponed. We'll see what that ends up meaning. But if you're an indie guy and you've put money into this thing for hotels and all the things that go with going to a trade show, that might be out. You don't know. Depends on how you booked. So
Yeah.
it definitely sucks for a lot of people. So uh, we'll definitely be obviously we're going to be watching this because it doesn't just affect the stories that we tell, but it affects our lives directly. So we will definitely keep an eye on this for you guys and keep you up to date on anything that happens. But for now, let's get down to some of our news topics for the week. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. We may have said that the Surface announcement might be delayed, but it hasn't changed the fact that all Surface devices are on sale right now, which definitely leads credence to the idea that new ones are on the way. Some of these deals are absolutely insane. $700 or $800 off on almost every model of the Surface Book 2, several $100s on Surface laptops, and a whole lot more. But there's more than just Surface devices, like the Xbox One, both S and X, available right now, or other laptops, not just Microsoft branded ones, and a lot more. VR and AR headsets, phones, and lots of other products, all available from the Microsoft Store. And if you want to find out about all the deals, you can go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. So we've talked about Clearview recently. And if you missed it, Clearview AI is a company that provides facial recognition for law enforcement. Now, in this particular case, when we're talking about facial recognition, we're talking about identity recognition. So, law enforcement officer can take their phone, point it at somebody, and get a match on who they are. Obviously, lots of privacy issues and all kinds of other things there. We've talked about that in the past. This week was not a great week for them, in addition to the lawsuits and the privacy concerns and all of that. First, their customer list, which they've been very private about, probably for a couple of reasons, was made public. Now, the company's lawyers have been very careful not to use the word hack, which is interesting because for me, that kind of suggests that maybe it could have come from somebody internal, but not necessarily. But the data list was totally exposed, and so now if you have the list, you know who is using Clearview AI's technology. Couple reasons that can cause problems. If you're the law enforcement agency, in particular, first, people in your jurisdiction know that you're using it. So you have to do, you do things to outsmart it or avoid, and you can defeat the technology. But more importantly, there are already states, New Jersey is a great example. It was revealed that one jurisdiction might have been using Clearview, and the state banned its use statewide. So that's a huge move, right? And so in this case, if you're trying to be secretive about it, so your state doesn't find out, the whole list is out. So from a privacy standpoint, it's probably a good thing. It's one of the reasons why the list, the customer list has been asked for before. And now we know who's using it, right?
I'd like to know how accurate it is first and foremost.
There's been a lot of question about that because the company's been very secretive about everything. Law enforcement seems to believe that it is highly effective and very accurate. But there's been no independent studies done on it because until the New York Times article in January, nobody even knew this company existed. So they were the definition of a stealth startup. And they were practicing. Like their product was out in the wild and nobody knew the company existed until the New York Times article. So there's been no independent verification. There's been no, testing of it by anybody other than law enforcement. But law enforcement seems to think it's highly accurate.
I'd like to, first of all, do we know that Clearview AI is the only company that provides this type of service?
No, because until 6 weeks ago, we didn't know they were providing it. If somebody else is providing this type of service, they are equally or possibly better stealth than Clearview was because, well, they got exposed.
Right. Doesn't the TSA use facial recognition for airport security?
They use a limited facial recognition that's designed to identify certain people. It does not bring up the name of everybody who walks through. It only brings up warnings when somebody on the watch list shows up. So it's a little different. But with Clearview,
although
theoretically,
we don't know what they're doing with the data.
True. With Clearview, theoretically, I can hold my phone up to you, and it will tell me Avram Pilch. And they've been doing it by scraping data off the internet, which is why the fact that their customer list was exposed is wonderfully ironic. They've been scraping data from around the internet, and then their data got scraped and put on the internet.
Now, just to play devil's advocate here, doesn't Facebook do the same thing? And not, although I guess it would only know about people who are Facebook users, so there is that. But
theoretically,
you get tagged. you get in someone's photo, right? Like I could be in the background on someone's photo that doesn't even know me, and I think it will identify me.
Depends on the
So,
privacy settings on your account, but it could.
oh, well,
And you can
certainly
also
Facebook's capable of doing it.
absolutely, and you can turn that off on Facebook, but that doesn't mean they're not running the scan anyway.
Right. Exactly. So it doesn't sound like, I mean, now I think what is really suspicious and would should probably lead to some lawsuits is where how are they building the database of photos of people because
by
they're
scraping
probably exploiting.
by scraping names and photos off of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and
Right. And I promise you that those now I don't know if they can prevail, but I promise you those violate the terms of service for those sites.
LinkedIn lost that battle uh, at the end of last year in a federal appellate court, and the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the case. So, as of right now, any data on a website that is made publicly available is publicly available. As far as legal precedent is concerned.
Hmm. But I'm sure they try to stop that. Like I
Facebook,
they probably try to look for bots, get doing that kind of work.
we know that Facebook uh, um, through Instagram went and started. They turned off a whole feature of Instagram and required you to be logged in for another piece. We talked about that last year because there was that marketing
Yeah,
company that was scanning data, and
right.
so uh, they started blocking users that were trying to access it too quickly, indicating data scraping and things like that. So they're active about it. They're not afraid to watch for bots and turn stuff off. So the other side
Unless
of
of
this,
course Clearview is paying them.
uh, Facebook has publicly called out Clearview um, for violating terms of service and has considered filing suit against them. Whether or not it would prevail, who knows, because of the LinkedIn suit, but they have threatened legal action against the company. So I don't know. But to make the week a little worse for Clearview, so people may not know this, but we've talked a lot about the distribution model for apps on iOS and the monopoly environment of distributing apps. There are actually three ways to distribute an app to an iPhone or an iPad. The first is through the App Store. The second is through TestFlight, which is also controlled by Apple. And the third is through an enterprise distribution model, which is designed for a company, a large company, let's say IBM, who wants to have an in-house corporate app that only their employees use. Through the enterprise distribution model, they can make it available only to devices within the enterprise. And that's how Clearview has been distributing this app. It's why nobody really knew about it, because they were not distributing it properly. Now, the important thing to know about the enterprise model is that it is only distributable to people within your enterprise. So, they have been violating the developer terms of service here, and so Apple turned off their developer account, and the app disappeared from all iPhone and iPad devices that had installed it through the enterprise model. Meaning that at this point, only Android devices could possibly run it because there's 1.5 million ways to install an app onto an Android device. So
How does that violate the terms of service? Is it because Clearview, let's say, I don't know, the police, New York City Police Department
mhm,
wanted to use it. Why can't they have their IT department distribute the app through an enterprise license, through
that's
their
not
own enterprise license?
that's not what they were doing. So Clearview had an enterprise uh, distribution certificate, and they were giving that certificate to the New York Police Department, for example. And so because nobody at the New York Police Department with a device works for Clearview for obvious reasons. Distributing to the police department, claiming that you're a Clearview employee, is a violation of the certificate rules.
I see. But if each individual organization that wished to use it did their own had their own enterprise license, then they could, and then Clearview sent them
The
the
IPA.
I don't know how you would do it, send them the code or whatever.
Send them the IPA.
Then they could do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be the next step for them to have to get around this. Enterprise distribution license are not inexpensive, so that would definitely limit the scope unless it's somehow factored into the pricing model, or I don't know. But an enterprise license from Apple is not inexpensive. So for right now, Apple has severely limited the reach of this app because apparently a lot of their customers were using it on iPhones and now are not. So two big blows to the company this week, because obviously a company that's doing law enforcement data analysis, not the kind of company that should be leaking data. And so that's gonna cause them issues with their customer base, and then not being able to use it on an iPhone is going to cause its own kind of batch of nonsense. So definitely some setbacks for the company there, which for privacy watchers will be a big win, even though they weren't involved in it. So. This week's Pilch Point with Avram Pilch is proudly powered by PureVPN. If you want to hide your browsing history from Google and Facebook and your ISP and everybody else, one of the best ways to do that is with a VPN. And right now, PureVPN has a deal. If you do a 2-year contract, you will get $3.33 a month, which is a really great deal, because on top of obfuscating your browsing, you also get the ability to report that you're somewhere else, so you can use services that may be region locked against you. And it works everywhere, whether you want to use it on Windows or Mac, Android, iOS, Linux. Tons of hardware has it built in as well, and you can find out all about the service and the deal that's running right now by going to pilchpoint.live/purevpn. So Avram, I know we've talked about this a little bit before, a couple of times, because it's one of your favorite products, but we have an anniversary this week.
Yes. So February 29th marked the 8th birthday of the Raspberry Pi, of the original Raspberry Pi, which, by the way, you could say it marked the second birthday because it's leap year. But let's just say let's just say 8 years, because if you were a child and you were born on February 29th, 2012, you would be in I think, first grade. So I mean, second grade. You would not be in nursery school. So anyway, I'm sure our repeat audience is very familiar with me talking about the miracle of technology that is the Raspberry Pi. It's the $35 computer, or actually available for as little as $5 if you get the Pi Zero, that is good enough to run a robot or run a web server, or even turn into one of these. Anyway, arcade machine. But the 8th anniversary is a good opportunity to reflect on some of the things that this groundbreaking single board computer uh, has become and how it started. So um, I put up an article this week about 8 things you might not know about Raspberry Pi on its 8th anniversary. Um, One is that the original target, the original reason that this was developed, is that Eben Upton, who was the founder of Raspberry Pi and is not currently the CEO of Raspberry Pi Trading, where they make these, um, was a professor at Cambridge University's computer science program, and he said that they weren't getting enough applicants anymore, and he wanted to inspire more kids to get into computer science. So he had the idea that they would maybe build an inexpensive computer that kids could hack, could play around with, hack around with, and that they'd make 1,000 units. Um, but once the level of people saw the level of interest that there was, um, they decided they couldn't just make 1,000 units. They were going to mass manufacture them. And now, 8 years later, there have been 31 million Raspberry Pis sold. Um, the 31 million includes, in 2019, the Raspberry Pi 4, the latest model came out. That so far has sold 6.6 million units, and 2/3 of those have been the model with the 4 gigabytes, uh, the 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is the highest end model. Um,
I'm
Now,
sorry. I'm sorry.
one,
I hold on. So they intended to make 1,000 devices. Period.
correct,
And yet,
correct.
this generation has sold how many?
6.6 million. That's the current fourth generation.
Yeah,
Fourth generation. Uh,
slightly different.
yeah. Well, 31 million in total, and a good chunk of those are not to kids. In fact, even though these are great for kids to use for learning, I set up one for my son on the TV, and he's using it to learn how to program video games using Python. Um, the the fact is that there are half of the clients for Raspberry Pi are industrial. That means they're using them in manufacturing and around businesses where they really need them, or building them into other products. So Raspberry Pi is a lot more than a kid's device. It's a lot more than a hobbyist's device. Um, it's And I think the real magic isn't just that it's inexpensive and low power, but I think the real magic comes from these, which are the GPIO pins. So you have 40 GPIO pins, and they can be used to attach a variety of different accessories and go into any kind of lights and motors that you want. So people use them to build robots. People use them to build all kinds of sensor arrays. People take a whole bunch of these, as we saw last year, and there were 1,000. There was a supercomputer cluster with, I think, 1,040 of these.
Uh-huh.
I think those were Raspberry Pi 3Bs, but um, those are some of the things that people have done with it. So yes, it's a lot more than 1,000. And one of the things that Upton told me was originally they were going to just make them themselves, the folks in the Pi Foundation, because they're only going to make a few units, and then they decide no, they can't do their own manufacturing, and that's when they went and got partners to do the manufacturing. Um, Another fact on the 8th birthday is that there have been, depending on how you want to count it, at least 18 different models of Raspberry Pi introduced in the last 8 years. These range from the original, which was the Raspberry Pi 1B, that had a 700 megahertz single core processor and 256 megs of RAM, up to the Raspberry Pi 4B, which came out in 2019 and has up to 4 gigs of RAM and a 1.5 gigahertz quad core processor. Um, so, and what's amazing is the price on these has actually dropped relative to inflation. So 35 got you the original Raspberry Pi in 2012. Today, $35 gets you. As of this week, they actually cut the price on the 2 GB model, the 2 GB Raspberry Pi 4B. So $35 and 2012 dollars is equivalent to $39.80 today. So you've actually uh, the price of it has actually shrunk by staying the same, while obviously what you get for that money has gone up a great deal. Um, Now, not only will you find Raspberry Pis in local electronics stores and online, but you'll find two of them on the International Space Station, where they are known as AstroPis. And through the European Space Agency, students can actually participate in contests where they get to have their code run in space.
Now that's cool.
Which is which is oh, I'm sorry. I last year, okay, I got the number wrong. Last year the company sold 6.1 million units in total, and 2 million of them were Pi 4B. And of the 2 million, 2/3 were 4 GB model. Now that's through the end of 2019, so probably selling more this year. Some other things that people may not know about the Raspberry Pi is that there's no power button, and they probably never will be a power button, because uh, the Pi Foundation believes a lot of people want to build these into systems where they put their own power switch, where they put their own power switches to it and attach it to the pins. So the traditional method of turning them on and off is to plug and unplug them. Of course, they recommend that you run shutdown in the operating system, because these run any of a variety of operating systems, although most people use the official OS, which is called Raspbian and is a flavor of Linux. Um, so there's no power button. People may also not know that all Raspberry Pis, or at least all recent ones, are overclockable, and it's built right into the operating system. So we've been able to get this up to all the way up to 2.147 gigahertz, uh, just by attaching a little fan, and upping the voltage. Uh, so there's just a ridiculous amount of uses as we look at what this product means today, and what it has meant over the last 8 years. And as this keeps developing, it keeps getting to be a better and better computer. So while I still wouldn't recommend that most people use this as their main computer, it is decent enough to watch videos, to surf the web. If you have a lot of tabs open, you could regret it, because even with 4 GB of RAM, that's not fantastic, and you're still loading everything off of the main storage on these is a micro SD card. So that can only be so fast. It's not exactly like uh, using an NVMe SSD in your laptop or desktop. But the influence of the product continues to grow, and as we see more revisions, the number of use cases grows. And while there have been a number of competitors or imitators, such as the Orange Pi and the Banana Pi, um, nothing has really come close to matching the Raspberry Pi, not only because of what it provides for the money and because of the fantastic build quality of them, but also because of just the really strong community that is behind them, that's developing software, that's answering your questions, um, that's being teachers teaching things in school. There, last year they told me 250,000 kids a week take part in Raspberry Pi programs, like at school education programs around the world. So, um, you know, just obviously a lot to celebrate after 8 years. This is my passion, and one that my son and I do a lot with. And I definitely encourage folks to check out the Raspberry Pi 8th birthday article on tomshardware.com, but also all the links to how you get started and make the most of this device.
And like you said, it's a device that you can make a lot of. We've we've
Yeah, I
talked about
mean,
everything from a web server through an arcade machine. That's a pretty wide range of projects.
yeah. So at CES this year, I saw a really awesome Raspberry Pi powered robot. It was named, I think it was named Ricci. And he could go, it was like a torso, and two hands. And he could go and like grab things and like play chess and manipulate stuff, right? And I said, "Oh, what board are you using to power this robot? Like what how, what's." They're like, "Oh, a Raspberry Pi 4." And they pulled up the robot's like guts were covered by like a little t-shirt. They pulled up those robot shirts and there it was. There it was. One of these powering this really complicated robot. So, um, it's just amazing. And, that's a good example of an industrial client. If they sell a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of those, they're going to have to use this to power it. Granted, I think they were telling me it was like something like $12,000. So they spent $35 on this, uh, but to be fair, to the company that makes it, like this is just the brain, but the really hard part is the things that you attach to it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to build human-like arms with fingers that can grab stuff. I
Right.
mean, that's really complicated, fabricating that. So you know the real difficulty and the real innovation comes with how to physically make the things that you control with this. It's a really powerful processor for the money and the power consumption, but ultimately what you attach to it is what makes it really special.
For sure. Well, I always love hearing about Raspberry Pi stuff, and the space bit, I had no idea. So
Yeah,
that's really cool.
they're Raspberry Pi ones, so that are on
Fascinating.
the ISS, and they run an annual contest called Project Zero. I think only students in the EU get to participate. Um, but you could definitely look it up. I wonder if at some point they're going to upgrade those to newer model, but that that's that's one of the many things that Raspberry Pi does.
Well, that's definitely a cool thing, and to be able to be the person who can say my software ran on the ISS. that's that's a cool brag right there.
Yeah, it is.
Very cool. Well, uh, as always, Avram, thank you uh, for talking about this, because that's some cool stuff right there, and I look forward to what we're talking about next. This week's Extra Life and F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. All the accessories you need to up your game on both PC and console are available from Razer. Whether you're looking for a new mouse like we use here in the studio, or a keyboard, or you're looking for a full system like the Razer Blade laptops, Razer's got them all. And they have introduced what they're calling Razer Silver, which is a rewards program for people who are big fans of the Razer products, like we are. With your purchases, you get points, and then you can get cool gear from there. And to find out about the new Razer Silver and all the products that are available, you can go to f5live.tv/Razer. Now, we don't usually talk about game announcements, but this week an interesting game announcement happened. It's interesting for me for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first, let's talk about the game. The game is called Fuser. It is from Harmonix, who we've talked about a couple of times over the last couple of years. For Christmas 2018, one of their games was one of our gift suggestions, and that was called DropMix. DropMix is a cool game. It's still available. In fact, it is super inexpensive right now. $29. Can't beat it. But anyway, DropMix allowed you to be a DJ, and with special, essentially trading cards that had NFC chips in them, you'd put them down on a platform and, you know, pull the vocals from this song and the keyboard from another and the drums from another, and be able to play music right there in the game, which is really cool. We bring it to every game night and party that we have. In fact, we've bought probably a dozen of them for friends and family as well. But of course, having to have special hardware and the trading cards are obviously a perishable commodity, because any card you've ever had that you've handled a lot, gets weird and starts to fall apart. And that's, it's not anything special to this. Pokemon cards do it too, and it is what it is. Right? And nothing has changed in decades. Trading cards, game cards get weird. Anybody who's ever played Magic knows that. Anyway, so Fuser is Mixer without those limitations. It's a really cool looking game. You get to be a DJ. It's played on console or PC. It's not out yet. It will be played on console or PC. And basically, you're headlining a music festival as a DJ, and it looks like a tremendous amount of fun. I'm super excited about it. But the thing that I find interesting here is, over the last 2.5 years, Harmonix, who we all know from Rock Band and things like that from the past, seems to have really flexed on rhythm games again, right? Because DropMix for holiday 2018, and then we've got what was it called? Twitch Sings, which was a partnership between Harmonix and Twitch for a karaoke game that we talked about probably a year ago. So that would have been their 2019 game. 2020, they're releasing another console game. A genre that I think most of us thought had gone back to being super niche. Harmonix seems to think has another life in it. What do you think, Avram?
I think these are good party games.
For sure.
Like music games are good party games. So if you're socializing with other people, I think they're a really good genre of game. And depending on whether any of the songs are, I don't know if there's a way to sort of exclude songs with explicit lyrics from the game or whatever, but Rock Band is like Rock Band, or any of those music console games are usually really good games to play with kids, particularly if you have a family thing with kids and adults.
Sure.
Because a lot of the sort of top video games that people have are not, first of all, they're not very social, right? I mean,
true.
Most console games are made for one player, unless it's a couple of games that, like Lego games, that have a 2-player mode or whatever.
Sure.
But
like
music games
co-op.
are really good. Yeah. But music games are really good for playing for the whole family. They're not too adult, usually not too adult for kids. not too childish for adults. So, um, so yeah, I look forward to this. I think it's good to have more options for things that people can play as a family or play with their kids. And who doesn't love music?
Sure.
So
And
now, now of course the question is it music that your kids will know? If not, then maybe they won't enjoy it as much. But who
um,
knows?
I saw on the announcement list. Um, I can pull it up again, but on the announcement list was a name that I know I probably should have known more than like 2 weeks ago, but Billie Eilish, which is a pretty popular name. Um, let's see, I'm trying to get a screenshot that's got some of the songs on it. Um, so so you've got Billie Eilish, Lady Gaga, and Lizzo and Post Malone, which are all pretty modern, right? And then you've got Blue Oyster Cult. So I mean,
Yeah, I'll probably be the one listening to the Blue Oyster. Actually, for my son, probably my 7-year old probably would prefer the Blue Oyster Cult to any of those bands, but because that's we raise him on the classics.
uh huh.
But yeah. So I think there's a lot, a lot of depending on what music is in it. I think there's something for everyone
And
when
they
you play
intend.
music games.
They said they intend to launch with 100 tracks, which I think is a good start. DropMix uh, shipped with 60 cards in it, well, which isn't 60 songs. It's not 60 tracks. It's just 60 uh, pieces of songs. Um, so launching with 100 full tracks, they get broken up the same way that DropMix did to drums, guitar, vocals, keyboard. I think is a great starting point, and then like any harmonics game, we know there will be additional packs in the future because that's how these games work. Um, the only thing that I think is going to bother me about the game is that they've changed the colors on some of the some of the things. Like the vocals is red instead of yellow. So anybody who's played DropMix, it's going to bother you a little bit, I think. But um, and the thing that I like is just like DropMix, it's not just you know put music together. The freestyle mode is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love the freestyle mode on DropMix. But there's also challenge modes in it, like audience request, which is similar to a feature from DropMix where it tells you to do this or do that. Find a mid. What I really like is find a mid '90s vocal track is one of the audience things. So you got to know more about the music this time than you did in the last. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I like the idea that music games are starting to see a resurgence again, and not just because we own a website about music games. That's a big bonus, but it's not the only reason. I have always enjoyed them. It's the reason why we created the site in the first place. So I'm super excited to see the game come out, and knowing somebody from our original team was involved in it for a little while makes it even better. So definitely looking forward to it, and once it's out, I guarantee we will do a review on it because super excited. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by Riff Tracks, Make Fun of Movies, or Let These Guys Do It For You. Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, the former stars of Mystery Science Theater 3000, are back and doing what they do best, creating commentaries for Hollywood blockbusters and B-movie oddities like Velvet Smooth. The way it works is for a couple of dollars, you download the MP3, play it along with your DVD, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, wherever that movie happens to exist, and laugh. Oh my goodness. They also do live events. They've got a couple coming up this year, which I'm very excited about. And the old ones also tend to find their way onto the site, and you can watch them without having to purchase the movie as well, which is great. And to find out about all of the movies, all of the short films, all of the live events, you can go to f5live.tv/rifftracks with an X. So before we get into this real quick, I will say, Avram, it is your fault. I have watched like 9 riff tracks this week because we were talking about platforms that offered them for streaming. And so I have kind of lived on riff tracks this week. So
sorry.
Birdemic and
sorry, not sorry.
Monos. Birdemic and Monos, my 2 favorites. I watch the live ones for, which is always fun. Anyway, so we talk a lot about privacy, a lot about internet security on the show, and this week, Firefox has turned on a setting in their browser that will increase your personal privacy when using the browser immensely. Here's how the internet works if you don't know. When you go to your browser and you type in www.plugkidslive.com and hit enter, those letters don't mean anything. So it goes to a server and says, what does plugkidslive.com mean? The server returns an IP address, which you would never know, and then is able to request data from the server. Most of the internet over the last couple of years has started to go to HTTPS, partially because Google has decreased PageRank for sites that don't use HTTPS, and partially because when you have a secure site, middleman can't track what's happening in the middle. So the data that's transferred between the sites is encrypted. So between the site and your computer, anybody in the middle gets nothing. And so if you're trying to protect your privacy, that's a good start. However, the process of going to that domain name server, the DNS, is still in the clear, though there is a protocol called DNS over HTTPS. And what Firefox has done is turned that on by default. It is going to roll out over the next couple of weeks to Firefox users in kind of a staged rollout, so they it doesn't turn out that there's a problem or something. So it's going to be a staged rollout. It'll take a couple of weeks for everybody to get it, but it does mean that your ISP will not be able to even track the DNS requests from your computer to a DNS server, because they will also be going over HTTPS, making most of your browsing history, at least from your ISP's standpoint, private. Once it gets to your computer, there's still cookies. There's still all the things that are normal that allow Facebook and Google and whoever to track your behavior. But the actual data transfers between machines on Firefox, at least, are going to be encrypted going forward. Chrome has been kind of alpha testing, I would say. They call it a beta test, but I don't think it's that far along. They've been testing the same thing. Their process is a little different than Firefox's. And then Microsoft has been working on it, but they haven't said where they are in the process. So hopefully we'll see it come to all the major browsers. But Firefox is definitely first to bring it out to U.S. residents. They will not be turning it on by default outside of the U.S., though it is still in your settings, so you can turn it on yourself. So
why wouldn't you want it?
Yes. True.
I mean,
totally agreed. But I have a feeling that because Firefox is working with a particular with one provider, in this case it's Cloudflare. They're working with one provider right now. They don't want the wrath of the EU coming down on them. so they're
So
not going to turn it on by
here's my
default.
question: who's paying for it? Who's paying Cloudflare?
Must be Mozilla.
I mean, where are they getting the money?
No idea.
I guess I mean, I guess we shouldn't look a gift DNS in the mouth, but you know, it's just like that seems like a service somebody would have to pay for.
Right?
I mean, of course, the other way to do this, if you're a end user and not have to worry about your browser, what browser you're using would be to use VPN, right?
Right.
If you have a VPN service, granted, the VPN service themselves could see your DNS, but I think most of them are, make pretty good promises about not storing that data. So, I mean that if you use VPN, then nothing that gets sent from your computer out to the internet is visible to your ISP.
Right. Which is
Now,
great.
here's my question though: why do we? I mean, not just to play devil's advocate for a second. Why do we care that much about worry that much about our ISP seeing our browser history? I mean, we certainly don't want people in the middle to be able to get things like our passwords and stuff like that. But
Sure.
I mean, is
Which
someone at your ISP actively looking at it, and what would they do with it?
so one of the biggest concerns when the FCC abandoned their net neutrality regulations was that the ISPs can sell that data for any number of reasons. Who knows what reasons those might be? But for me, it's not about the ISPs. The ISPs are the ones who are upset about it. But for me, it's not about the ISPs. There's been, over the last couple of years, there's been a number of incidents where man-in-the-middle attacks have happened on the DNS side, and have been able to capture and reroute certain domains. And with this, they can't capture and therefore can't redirect. So it eliminates the issue of man-in-the-middle attacks on DNS, which is important. If you're on a more than like if you're on your home ISP, if you're on a public ISP, you're on a Starbucks or a McDonald's Wi-Fi, for example. You know, who knows what might or might not be going on in that router? If somebody has hacked into it, if something has happened and particular things are being rerouted. With this, at no point are you going through a traditional DNS structure, and a man-in-the-middle attack can't happen. So for me, that's where the real benefit here is.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I think we all want enhanced privacy, so and to make sure that we have better security. So
Mm-hmm.
it seems like in a few months this will be a non-issue, and all three major browsers. Well, I guess you didn't mention Safari, but I'm going to guess Apple will probably do it also.
You never know what's going on there. They don't talk about what they're working on in Safari ever. So they might not. There's no telling. But here's the thing. If you're interested in this feature and you're not using Firefox, which based on internet statistics, you're not. If you want to use the feature, and apparently this is how it works as an answer to your question, Avram, the DNS server 1111, which at one point was, I believe, under Google's control, seems to be under Cloudflare's control now, and it is DNS over HTTPS by default. Now, so if you want to go and change your DNS settings on your computer or your router, if you're up for that, and you use 1.1.1.1 as your DNS then you will be using DNS over HTTPS now. Cloudflare has a document on their website about how to do it. So if you're not using Firefox, I think the last statistic I saw was 19% are. So statistically, you're not. Cloudflare can still take care of you. And just so that you know, Mozilla has said that they are open to other partners in addition to Cloudflare, but they have rules. And if the DNS follows all of those rules, they will be implemented in as an option in the future, so that they're not creating that same monopoly, right? Where now Cloudflare is in charge of everything, and if people start getting weary about Cloudflare, they don't have another option. So Mozilla is working to eliminate that concern as well. So it's nice to see that a browser is out there, looking for ways to take care of its users. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You know you get free shipping, but you may not know you get free music with Amazon Prime Music. You get free videos, TV, movies, documentaries with Amazon Prime Video. And you also get free video games with Twitch Prime. Plus, you get one free subscription every month to financially support the content creator of your choice. You can use it to subscribe to Plug Hits Live or anybody else on Twitch and help them out financially. And we've got quick links because I cannot always find these features. We've created a page with some quick links to these and other features that are all part of your subscription. And if you're not already a Prime subscriber, we've got a 30-day free trial so you can find out if it's for you. And all of that is available by going to f5live.tv/prime. So we've talked about this a little bit marginally in the background of other stories. PragerU filed suit against YouTube and obviously Google in 2017 over its content policies, claiming that YouTube has a tendency to use its content policies against content creators that disagree with Google's general political stance on topics differently than other content creators. Obviously, they have some public backing on that. There's been this has been a going topic for a number of years now, but Google has demonetized whole categories of videos. If you have a tag that mentions the word gun, for example, your video cannot be monetized. If we use a tool for YouTube that gives us monetization warnings when we use certain tags, and there have been tags that are related to CES that they're like, I wouldn't do it. And
like what? Could you have some examples?
I can't remember the last one that I got, but it was weird. It was a word that had double meaning. I wish I could remember what it was. I've got it written down somewhere, but I've skipped relevant tags because TubeBuddy has gone, I wouldn't. And only because of one of its meanings, not the other. But YouTube doesn't discriminate. Once it dislikes a word, it dislikes a word. This invariant of context. And so PragerU brought a suit against YouTube, claiming that because the company has in front of Congress called themselves a public, what do they call themselves? I hope I didn't just, a public forum for free speech. that by shutting down um, free speech, that they were by making the claim in front of Congress, they were therefore acting as a public arm, and by shutting down their free speech, they were to be held up as government censorship, as a public actor, and a court shot them down this week. It was the second in a row. The first court single judge threw the case out. They appealed, and an appellate court with a panel of 3 judges unanimously said that the argument doesn't hold up. And they pointed to a Supreme Court case that was similar-ish, that said that just because you are a place where people can post free speech doesn't make you a public actor. There's other cases that suggest that that's not exactly the case. A quad at a private university is considered a public actor, and so a private university can't shut down speech on a public in a quad by somebody from the school or something like that. There's been other cases that have gone the other way, but the most recent comes from the Supreme Court, and it was similar enough that they dismissed the case. I suspect that PragerU will appeal this one more time, but I can't imagine that the Supreme Court is going to hear it. But more importantly, it has brought legal attention to a concern that many YouTubers on all sides of the conversation have complained about, and that has been the inconsistent application of content policies. We've talked about it a lot over the last couple of years. I think I went and I looked, and we've had, over the last 3 years, we've had 16 topics addressing inconsistent content guidelines on YouTube. And so it's a known issue, and this brought some more public spotlight to it, which I think is important. What do you think, Abram?
Yeah. Well, I can't help but feel a little bit of empathy for YouTube
Mm-hmm.
in these YouTube and Facebook and Twitter are really all caught. If you think of them all as social networks, because I know YouTube also you could say as a publishing platform, but if you think of them, they I know how these companies are largely thinking. They actually don't want to be political. What they want to be seen as is apolitical. Uh, so, but I think they also have to worry about sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
So they demonetize stuff not necessarily because they want to punish um, the I mean, maybe sometimes because they want to punish the person who posted it, but sometimes because it's such a hot potato
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to get, as we've talked about previously, advertisers don't want to be associated with, don't want their ads trafficked on something that is a hot potato,
For sure.
and it can be really hard to when you buy ads on a platform like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, you're not generally buying them on a particular channel. You're not saying like, I want my ads to appear on the F5 Live channel, and I want it
Right.
to appear on the Tom's Hardware channel, and I want it to appear on this one and that one. You're saying I want my content to appear either on stuff that has these keywords or stuff or just general run of site. And so what you don't want if your YouTube is your actual clients who are paying you, the advertisers coming and saying, I can't believe you put my content on this stuff, that I'm complaints from the public because it's controversial. So they're just trying maybe to sell ads against this content isn't hampered.
Mm-hmm.
And while the public generally treats social networks as if they're a public utility, they are not. If we really want unlimited free speech uh, on a platform that has unlimited free speech, then it would have to be a public platform. Not These are all private platforms
Yep.
with their own sets of rules that allow anyone to register and post content for free, and generally allow a lot of different viewpoints, even viewpoints that are against the company. I mean, how many people are tweeting on Twitter about how much they don't like Twitter, right? Or don't
Or
like see of Twitters.
how many times have we posted episodes on YouTube talking about the inconsistent
About
policies
YouTube.
of YouTube?
This will be there. So, you know, so I think overall they want to allow people to they don't want to be in the business of banning things,
Mm-hmm.
but when they demonetize something or they flag it as adult as like mature content, they're trying to stay out of trouble. Now, I get it that if it's your video and you want to get your message out there, you don't want a you want to make money
Sure.
through the monetization, and B, you want every as many people as possible to be able to see your message. But the company that is providing the platform, they have an interest,
Absolutely.
which is the controlling interest, which and their interest. I really don't believe that their interest. I mean, people can feel the opposite, but I really don't believe that they have an interest in really espousing a particular political viewpoint by censoring another viewpoint. I think that they are purely about the money,
Yeah,
uh,
and
and
for sure,
and
and it's one of the
I mean,
as a
some people would like them to be a little bit more proactive about censoring. Believe me.
indeed, and you know, if you need a litmus test on that, let's take a look at the conversation about Facebook and Mike Bloomberg and the paid influencer posts on Facebook and Instagram, and the fact that Facebook's not classifying those as political ads because they're not coming from a politician or from a registered PAC.
Right. I mean, a lot of what I mean, we that's a maybe different topic, but like Facebook is doing a lot of things that would not be allowed. I don't think would meet the standards and practices of network television. Like I don't think you can run an ad on network television that is demonstrably. I don't think they would mostly accept ads that were demonstrably false. Um,
There's actually an
and
interesting
Facebook
episode of
will.
Boston Legal about exactly that topic and the fact that the courts have said that there is no responsibility on the network's part to say no to an ad, even if the information is knowably false. Now,
Well,
whether or
certainly.
not they will is a whole different topic.
Right.
But they have no legal requirement to do so because there's a law against censorship of political speech, and because the airwaves are provided free of service to the broadcasters, they fall under public actor, uh, which does bring it back to this topic.
Right.
They fall as a public actor because the airwaves are a public utility, and so they cannot censor uh, political speech. Fascinating topic.
But cable could.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um,
Yep. Cable can.
so Anyway, I mean,
Fascinating
I know
topic.
it sounds bad to say that YouTube is censoring something, but I think when you look at when what they're really saying is they're demonetizing something.
Sometimes.
They're they're doing it because they want they don't want to get in trouble with their advertisers.
Yep. And that's why when I do media consults for people, I tell them don't make YouTube or Facebook your primary source. Use it as a funnel to your environment, because I always use it. I don't like him, but we'll use it. Alex Jones is a great example. His content came down over content. um, but he wasn't taking advantage of his own website. He was taking advantage of YouTube. When YouTube said get off the platform, whoop, everybody went away. What do we say on the show? Follow us on the social media platforms, but subscribe on plughitslive.com. Because
Right. Well, I mean, the other thing is that, if you're trying to monetize your content, YouTube is selling the ads and YouTube is taking a largest cut of the profit. So,
true.
But at the same time, these platforms are kind of invaluable. It's much harder to get somebody to go to view something that's hosted on to view
True.
video. Let's say it's hosted on your website, than it is to get people on YouTube. So
very true. It's it's definitely a great sourcing platform.
Yeah.
It's the YouTube is the third largest search engine by volume or something like that. So it's a great way for people to find you. But if you can figure out how to keep them find you here, watch you there, that's that's always your best case scenario. Which is why we do video through RSS, so you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all that stuff too. So, because they don't have control over those. Anyway, that is our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We always appreciate that. If you didn't and would like to in the future, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, you can go to f5live.tv/join us. See, to follow our conversation. You could also go to Mixer/PlugHitsLive or Twitch.tv/PlugHitsLive. But f5live.tv/join us will take you there as well. And you can chat with us in the studio. Give us your feedback on the topics. You can always go to plughitslive.com/subscribe and see all the ways that you can subscribe to all the shows, whether it be on social media or YouTube or through your podcatcher. And so I guess with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Abram.
And we will see you guys back next time. Ciao.